Hello everyone, today we are going to solve the paper 2 multiple choice examination question paper variant 2 paper 2 May-June 2025. So let us start. First of all, I just want to announce that the correct answer will be in the yellow color and the wrong answer will be in the blue color for us to analyze each and every question together, and let us start. Now, in this question he's telling you the photograph shows an animal called margay. Four processes that occur in margay, which is this cheetah looking like animal. He's saying here how many of the processes that occur in the margay are characteristics of all living organisms. So as we know that the characteristics of living organisms are what? They are Mrs. GREN, right? So we know that all of the characteristics of the organisms are what? They are Mrs. GREN, right? So Mrs. GREN here, M stands for the movement, the R stands for the respiration, the S stands for the sensitivity, the G stands for the growth, the R stands for the reproductivity, and the E stands for excretion, and N stands for nutrition. So simply you're gonna check from upon this Mrs. GREN, you're gonna observe it, and then you're gonna check here from the four processes that he gave you. So Mrs. GREN, so first of all movement, well I don't have movement here. He's saying you how many of the Mrs. GREN you can see in the question. So well I can see excretion, I can see growth, I can see respiration. Digestion is a wrong option because it's not there already, and digestion actually occurs, it's not in one of the main characteristics of all living organisms. So basically the answer will be C. Number 2 is saying here at least part of the base DNA sequences for species was determined. He's telling you here which two species are the least closely related. Least closely related means that they have the least common base sequences. Okay, so let us check it and understand how this question can be solved easily. Now as you can see, we have a T here, we have a T here, we have a C here, we have a G here, A here, G here, G here, G here, C here, A here, T, which is different, and we have here AG. So species 1 and species 3 have more differences compared to species 2 and species 4. Like species 2 and species 4, they are almost like the first four bases are everything the same. Like T with T, G with G, A with A, and G with G. So they are all closely related, and they are closely the same basis. So nothing had changed. Okay. Now moving to question number 3. It's telling you here a single-celled organism has chloroplast, a cell wall, and a nucleus. A single cell means, and don't get tricked by the word chloroplast. Chloroplast is a plant cell and it's multicellular cell, right? But in here, the Protoctist is another cell which have chloroplast. It is a single-celled organism and it is aquatic organism. Why I cannot say the fungus? Because a fungus does not have chloroplast and it is saprophytic or saprophytic, so it cannot be correct. Plant, no, it is a multicellular. He's saying here a single cell, not a multi-cell. Prokaryotes, of course no, because prokaryotes does not have chloroplast. Prokaryotes are like the bacteria. Bacteria does not have a chloroplast, and it also does not have a nucleus. It have a circular DNA, and that circular DNA is in the plasmid. So no, number C is not correct. So the final answer will be obviously D. What is a leaf? Of course, a leaf, it is an organ. We cannot say it's a cell, because a cell meaning that you need multi and millions and billions of cells. So of course A will be the incorrect option, and let us highlight it with the blue color because it stands for the incorrect option. Okay, what is a leaf? It's an organ system. Of course no, an organ system means the whole plant. A tissue means like the epidermis tissue, it is the tissue. Like when I say tissue, I mean the epidermis tissue. Okay, so now let us illustrate it here for you to understand. Tissue means what? Means epidermal tissue. Epidermis or epidermal, both are the same, no, nothing different. Epidermis what? Epidermis tissue. Okay, so this is an example of what? Of a tissue. Okay, so now let's just put it here. Okay, now move to question number 5. Question number 5 is telling you a student measured the length of the structure using a microscope. A student with magnification was 2 times 250. The image size was 5 micrometers, and it's saying what the actual size. So we can use a triangular base formula called I am. I here, A here, am here, and in fact he want the actual length. So just let us calculate it. So he's saying here A is equal to I divided by M. So he's saying here that the image size was 5.0 divided by 250, but that 5 is in millimeters. So the final answer, you're gonna get it and multiply it by 1000 so that you can get your answer in what? In micrometers. Okay, and remember, actual length is always and always and always in micrometers. I never saw an actual length in millimeters. Also, this information is crucial for your AS level and A2 levels because they are really commonly asked. Okay, now moving to the next question, which is number 6. Okay, number 6 telling you here which row shows a condition when diffusion of oxygen into blood is the fastest. Of course, when I have an alveolar surface that is high surface area, a larger surface area means more faster diffusion and slow and smaller diffusion distance. And yes, so here if obviously diffusion path distance will be shorter, concentration gradient I need it to be high to increase my diffusion, to increase the diffusion of oxygen into the cells. So let us here like illustrate this example of number 6, and let us like have an example. So now I have my lovely alveoli here. Okay, and I have my blood vessels flowing. Okay, now these are blood cells carrying the oxygen, and this is my alveoli. Okay, this is why my what? This is my alveoli. Okay, now as you can see, if I have a larger surface of the alveoli, meaning that more oxygen will diffuse, more oxygen will what? More oxygen will diffuse into what? More oxygen will diffuse into the capillary tissues, into the capillary what? Into the capillary tubes. So more oxygen will diffuse from the alveoli, so I have a larger surface area for more oxygen to diffuse into the capillary, so hence a smaller diffusion distance to cover. As you can see now, there's a smaller diffusion distance to cover for the oxygen as it has a larger surface area, so more now oxygen molecules can enter at the same time. More oxygen molecules can enter at what? At the same time, like that and like that and more. Okay, so this is just an illustration for you to understand the question and grasp the idea and never forget it again. Okay, so now just move us to the next question. Sorry. Okay, now let us move to the next question here. Okay, let's put this here. Okay, now question number 7 is telling you uncooked potato cylinders of identical size were placed into 4 different liquids. So just for your information, 4 different liquids is your independent variable. Okay, it is your independent variable. It's saying here different liquids are listed: pure water, sugar solution that was less concentrated than the contents of a potato cells, and a sugar solution that was more concentrated than the content of potato cells, a sugar solution that was the same concentration as the content of potato cells. Okay, so in which liquid will the potato cylinder increase in length? Well, obviously it's 1 and 2, because pure water, meaning that it has a higher water potential. Pure water will have a higher water potential, more water molecules will be present in that water solution. So it's just an illustration for that. We can have like a beaker of water here, a beaker of water, okay, containing only pure water here, water containing water. Okay, so and I have my potato tissue here. So more water will diffuse in will move by osmosis into the potato tissue. Okay, and this indicates what? This indicates that osmosis moves from a higher water potential to a lower water potential. So it will increase in length, obviously it will increase in mass, it will increase in everything you can imagine of. Okay, the height, everything. Number 2 is telling you here a sugar solution that was less concentrated. Of course, less concentrated means it also has a higher water molecule, so the water molecules will be higher than the sugar molecules. Okay, number 8, what is the correct definition of an enzyme? Of course, I cannot say that it's carbohydrates because they are proteins. I cannot say carbohydrates, so A and B are all like wrong. Protein that act as substrate, well, enzymes hydrolyze and break down substrate, so you cannot say that D is a correct option. So your answer in 8 is C. Number 9. It's telling you here, a student investigated how the rate of photosynthesis is affected, okay? Is affected by carbon dioxide concentration, temperature, and light intensity. Well, this is a pretty easy question if you understood and grasped the concept. It's telling you here which is a correct statement for this result. Carbon dioxide is a limiting factor at 1. Okay, well, yes, because as the carbon dioxide concentration increases, rate of photosynthesis increases, as carbon dioxide is a limiting factor, okay? Can you proceed to the next choice? Of course we can. He's saying here no enzymes are denatured at 3. Well, here they are denatured, okay? Of course they are denatured because we exceeded what? We exceeded the 40 degrees Celsius, or we can say the optimum temperature of any enzyme, okay? So we had exceeded this. So now that 3, we can say on it is partially denatured. So at the end of the day, yup, it is denatured. So partially denatured is a phrase you're going to use in your AS when you enter it, okay? So number C is, say light intensity is limiting for at factor 4. No, as the graph levels off, now the light intensity is no longer a limiting factor. Maybe temperature, carbon dioxide concentration is the limiting factor. So C is incorrect. And actually this was repeated many times in paper 4 in 2016, 2020, 2023. Paper 4 variant like of May, June and November. They are really more repeated in these exams, okay? Temperature is limiting factor at 2. Of course, we cannot say it's limiting factor at 2 because this graph shows the effect of enzyme on the effect of temperature on the enzyme. So we can see here a steep increase. So we can see here what? So we can see here a steep increase followed by a steep, gradual increase followed by a steep decrease. So this one cannot be, of course, illustrated. So your final answer here is letter A. Okay. So also let me just put an illustration for you to understand it. So now imagine I have my graph, and I have here my this and like that, and I have, for example, here temperature. Okay, so from here until this part, we can say that this part is what? That this part is temperature is a limiting factor. Is what? It is a limiting what? It's a limiting factor. As the graph starts to level off, once it levels off or once it reaches plateau, okay, we cannot say that temperature is a limiting factor. We will say that maybe carbon dioxide concentration or the light intensity is a limiting factor. And you need to say carbon dioxide concentration. It's not like an option you cannot say it. No, you need to say it to get your full marks, of course, okay? So just let us put this properly here. No, that is under this last two. Okay, here. Yep. Just put this here. Yep. So we can see here in this part, level of not a limiting factor. Okay. Now question number 10 now is saying here. Question number 10, the diagram shows what? The diagram shows a cross section of parts of a leaf. It's saying what is the cell labeled X? Well, the cell labeled X is balanced mesophyll cells and it's something that is memorizable. It's not like something to negotiate about. It's very easy. Number 11, which part of the digestive system does physical digestion occurs? Well, it will be B1 and 2. Why? You will tell me why not 3. Well, 3 is a pancreas and it is a part of the it releases endocrine hormones. So pancreas does not like it does not like provide any physical digestion. It provides mechanical digestion, okay? It releases a trypsin at the duodenum and it does not has like anything to do about physical digestion, okay, which occurs like in the mouse and these things. So 3 will be cancelled. 3 will be cancelled. 4, of course, it's a large intestine. Nothing here occurs, only the reabsorption of water, and it is the part that more water will be reabsorbed at, but it does not involve physical digestion, so your answer will be B. 12. Table shows the substrate and the products for this enzyme controlled action. What was action controlled by lipase? So as we know that lipase, coming from the name, lipase means what? Means lipids. See, lipase means what? Means lipids. Okay, so it's very simple, and the answer will be here letter B, because it breaks down the oil, and oil is a lipid, and it breaks down fatty acid and glycerol. Can I say maltose? No, it's broken down by maltase. Protein is broken down by either pepsin or trypsin, and we talked it about in the previous video of the May-June 2025 variant 1 paper 2. And the starch, well, it is hydrolyzed first by amylase, so it is not by lipase. And I can give you also a mnemonic for you to understand it and like memorize it for a longer period of time. Just like that, we can say that it is lipase, right? Lipase. Watch out this. Lipids. Lipids. See the matching part? This one is the matching part. So now that is why you can remember the name like very easily and more effectively than ever before using my lovely way. Okay, now here in 13, what is the function of a microvilli in the small intestine? Well, microvilli increases the surface area for the reabsorption. Why not A? Not A, it is in the nervous system. C, movement of food particles. Well, that is not in function of microvilli. Okay, and this is a function of the stomach and the food gut and the food pipe and like this. Movement of mucus, well, that will be by your not microvilli, of course, it will be by the ciliated epithelial cells, which have cilia that beats and move the mucus out of your lungs back to the stomach to be swallowed and killed by the acid in the stomach. Now 14, which shows the features of xylem vessels. Vessel walls, of course, it should be thick for it to support the high and withstand the high water pressure. Mitochondria present? No, because a xylem vessel, remember with me that a xylem vessel like this, xylem is what? Remember with me, the Xerophytes lesson, it's a dead tissue. It's a dead what? It's a dead tissue. Remember that part. It is what? It's xylem is a dead what? Is a dead tissue. This one is what? Is a dead tissue. Now moving on to the next question. It's telling you here, 15, a student wanted to investigate the effect of humidity on transpiration. She sets up two sets of apparatus with identical sized plants of the same species. The masses of water in both test tubes were measured at the start of the investigation, and again after 5 days. Table shows the result of the investigation. It's saying you here, okay, which statement describe and explain the result? Of course, we will say transpiration in tube Y was lower, because as you can see here, mass of the water that was lost, mass of the water in test tube at the start was 41.0, and mass of the water in the tube at the end was higher than X, meaning that less water was lost, meaning that the mass was also less affected. So of course, Y had a less decrease in mass, so Y had a lower rate of transpiration. So basically, now A will be wrong because Y has a lower and Y has a higher, so A and B are wrong. Is now the idea now in this part. So he's now cornering you in this part. So you need to focus in this what? In this part. See here, focus with me in this part like this. Here, in this column. This is where confusion starts. He's saying here, tube Y was lower than in tube X as the plastic bag increased the humidity. Of course, plastic bag increased the humidity. As you can see here, of course, a plastic bag cannot decrease the humidity because more water vapor will be trapped inside that plastic bag as a result of evaporation and transpiration that occur. So the water, of course, on the leaves will evaporate, creating more humidity than ever before. 16. Okay, what is the advantage of double circulatory system? Oxygen is supplied to the body cells by blood at high pressure. Why others are wrong? Well, simply others are wrong for like a simple reason. It allows mixing. No, it does not mix. It allows them to be separated, not mixing. Keep blood pressure high. Of course, no. We want to ensure that the capillaries in the lungs are not damaged. So of course we keep the blood pressure low. Less carbon dioxide is removed from the body cells. Of course, more carbon dioxide is removed from body cells because the deoxygenated blood passes through the alveoli, and we can remember that in the alveoli question where I drew for you the alveoli. So basically, the carbon dioxide will be present in here. Carbon dioxide will be present in here, and it will be exchanged. It will move out of the lungs. Move out of the lungs through the alveoli and into the air, and it will be released into the air. Okay. So now 16 is D. 17 is something that you need to like memorize. It's like a fact. Which circulation heart separates oxygen and deoxygenated blood? So we have here our heart. Okay, 4 partitions, 4 parts, and this part is a septum where it separates the oxygenated and deoxygenated blood from mixing. 18. Features of a vein. Of course, it's also a fact. Relative thickness of a wall. Of course, it is thin because thick is artery. Thick walls means an artery, like directly. Thick walls means an artery. Diameter of lumen, it should be larger because in here in a vein we want a low blood pressure, and presence of valves, of course they are present due to the low blood pressure, and we can just make a drawing for you in here. So for a vein we can make it like that. This is a vein, okay? So we have thin walls and a large lumen, and what? Tell me, like, repeat with me. Large lumen. So blood can flow at a lower pressure compared to an artery which had the lumen narrower than the vein to ensure a high blood pressure, and this is not the case in this question. Okay, moving on to the next question. 19 is telling you here, three statements about immunity are listed. A transfer of antibodies from mother to baby in breast milk is an example of passive immunity. Of course that is true, because like the baby is gonna receive these antibodies from his mother breast milk. So basically yes, that's true. It's telling you here passive immunity result in long term immunity because of the production of memory cells. Well, in passive immunity no memory cells are being produced. That only occurs in the active immunity, which is not the case in here. So 2 cancel, 2 cancel, 2 cancel. The answer is C. 20. Table shows the breathing rate and average total volume of air breathed by someone exercising for 20 minutes. What conclusions can be made from data in table effect of exercise on breathing? He's saying the answer is B. Now let's see. Between 0 minutes and 10 minutes the depth of breathing increases. Okay, well let us check it. 0 here, okay, depth of breathing, okay, increases. So 0 and 10, well I can see that it was 5,000, now it's 15,000, okay. And it's saying here in the letter A there was no change. Well, there's a change. There's an increase of 10,000. There is an increase of 10,000 centimeter cubed. There is an increase of what? There is an increase of 10,000 centimeter cubed. Moving on to the next part, C is saying between 10 and 20 minutes, okay, there is no change in the rate of breathing. Well, in the breathing rate, there is no change in breathing rate. No, it changed. Let me prove it for you. Now 10 and 20, right? 10 and it was 12 and now it came 22. So there is an increase of 10 breathes per minute. There is an increase of what? Of 10 breathes per minute. So plus 10. Now between 15 and 20 minutes depth of breathing decreases. Well, 15 and 20, no, it increased by 5,000 centimeter cubed per minute. So the answer is B. What is the formula of glucose? This is very basic and very simple, and it's like it's not good to be mistaken in this question. It's memorization. So the answer here is C. 22 is saying here what it represents at X. Okay, what happens at X? Diagram show oxygen depth is removed. What happens at X? Well, aerobic respiration of lactic acid, because here as you can see lactic acid forms the muscles, which means that we are now entering into an oxygen depth case. Lactic acid moved in the blood to the liver to be broken down. Faster breathing supplies extra oxygen to allow the breaking down. To allow what? To allow breaking down of what? To allow breakdown of lactic acid. To allow breakdown of me. To allow breakdown of what? Of lactic acid. So in X, aerobic respiration of lactic acid, and when we say aerobic respiration because you had supplied me with oxygen, don't forget that you had oxygen here that you provided the cell with. Now 23, which is my favorite lesson, nervous system. Which organ produces urea? Well, urea is produced in the liver, and it was repeated in variant 1 May June 2025 when we said that the deamination of excess amino acid occurs in the liver. 24, well, it is C. I'll tell you why it's C. Something actually to memorize also. It's nothing like it's not like thinking, it's a fact. So Q contracts. Q contracts. Okay, so for Q to contracts here, and the R become fatter. So the R become fatter and S becomes slacker. Slacker means it's like less tightened. So when I say it's less tightened, now a fly is coming near to your eye. So like just the eye takes these conditions for the fly to be seen clearly by your eye. 25. Which organ produces glucagon? Obviously it's a pancreas. So and I told you that in the previous question when we talked about physical digestion. So of course it is what? It is your pancreas. adrenal gland releases adrenaline, which is not our case here because it is not glucagon, it is adrenaline. Liver, no, it does not release anything. Ovary, it releases oestrogen, it's not our question. 26 is saying here, a young seedling is growing underground. The shoots grow towards the surface of the ground. The root grows away from the surface of the ground. Which will describe the responses? Gravitorism, of course, yes. Why? Yes. The root and shoot is now, it is underground. In fact, it is underground. Like, in fact, with me, bear with me. It is underground, right? Right. Towards the surface of the ground, of course. So towards the surface of the ground means that both are what are following the gravitorism rules. The shoot, you will tell me, but it's going away from the surface of the ground. I will tell you now that the shoot is going towards the surface of the ground, meaning that the shoot is following gravitorism. And phototropism, of course, no one of them follows to phototropism, because if the shoot followed phototropism, it will grow away from the surface of the ground. But in that case, of course, I cannot say this. In that case, the shoot here, let me draw it for you. So, like, for example, if I have here my soil, I have here my plant, okay, my leaf. If we were talking about a phototropism, and here's my sun, okay, now the plant will go to, and it will go away from the surface of the ground. It will not like face like that, it will not be like that. No, it will be facing the sun for phototropism due to the act of oxygen. So I hope this question is clear. And if you have any questions, please leave it in the comment section and I'll answer you directly. 27. Okay, this plant, it's a species of bacteria that is resistant to many antibiotics. From 2002, the number of people in one country infected with this disease increased from 13,000 to 6,000 people. Percentage increase. So in percentage increase, you will follow a lovely formula, okay, which is what? Which is final minus initial over the initial value times 100. So in our case, we had 6,200 minus 1,300. Just the text is so big. In our case, we had what? We had 6,200 minus 1,300 over 1,300 times 100, and basically the answer will be letter, as we can see in the question, letter D. 377 percentage increase. Okay, so this is how you're gonna calculate your percentage, your percentage increase, okay, using that formula. And actually it is very easy, and actually in fact it is repeated a lot in many past paper questions, so you just can practice about it in case it came in your exam. It's saying here, what are the characteristics of asexual reproduction? Asexual reproduction does not involve fusion of gametes, because fusion of gametes, it occurs only in the sexual reproduction. In the sexual reproduction, genetic variety, of course there is no genetic variety, because if you refer to the June 2025 question paper 21 variant 1 that I solved the video before that, you can see that there was a plant, okay, and that offspring was removed from that plant. So of course, and like by basic mind, it will not be different, it will be genetically identical. So it does not here qualifies, so asexual reproduction does not here qualify with genetic variety, because genetic variety only occurs in sexual reproduction. Cross-pollination is just a definition you need to memorize. Transfer of pollen grains from the anther of one plant to the stigma on a different plant. Here is the main idea of what? To a different plant, okay? 30. Which row correctly links the named process is description, menstruation, description, shading of lining of the uterus. Of course, when the menstruation starts, lining of the uterus, and we can have here the graph, the thickness of the line starts to decline. It's like that. First at high, it will be high, and then as menstruation occurs, it will be lower in thickness. Ovulation, it is the release of an egg from the ovary, so we cannot say that it is correct. And ovulation, start of puberty, no, of course, that is incorrect, of course. And menstruation, release of an egg, no, this is ovulation. 31, we can now here understand what? Let us analyze this question carefully. It's like you can see here a pedigree. The diagram shows inheritance of a genetic condition in one family. What can be concluded from about this genetic modification? So we can see here a male, okay? A male with the condition married a female with the condition. They had three daughters. They had one daughter and two male offsprings, okay? Now that infected male, okay, had married a female, okay, and they produced what? They produced another infected male, which can let you understand that this is a dominant allele case. Why it's dominant allele case? Well, because we only need one chromosome for it to be like expressed. So suppose that condition, okay, like the ones that are having that condition is what? Is A, and no condition is a small. So now basically if I say it is recessive allele, no, it will be wrong, because I need two of these, and that will not occur. Why will not occur? Because basically an X, which is the mother, only passes you one X chromosome, and the father passes you a Y chromosome, okay? So you cannot say, it's impossible for you to say it's recessive, because the Y chromosome does not have anything here to do with what? With your genes. And now you will tell me, but why it's not a sex linked? Okay, because like, see, now if that father passes an X chromosome to the daughter, X chromosome and X chromosome of both the female and the male will not affect the daughter, so it's not sex linked. Obviously it's not sex linked at all. So yes, this is a question. I hope you understood it, and if you didn't understand, please leave me a comment in the comment section, okay? So the answer here will be B. It's now telling you what is a way in which new alleles are formed. Mutation, of course. Artificial selection. New offsprings are formed without new alleles. New varieties of offspring are formed in a sense that you had already breeded them. Like you had brought two parents with the same characteristic, and you want that characteristic to show up in the offspring. So this is artificial selection. So no, A is incorrect. Sexual reproduction, of course no, because in sexual reproduction you don't have new alleles. You have what? You have genetic variation, but you don't have new alleles. Natural selection does not form any new alleles, because natural selection is basically changing or making an evolution in a special feature in an offspring. So of course it will be B, because as you can see, B mutation, definition is it is a change in the DNA based sequences forming new alleles. And I'm sure that you had encountered such a definition in paper 4 past papers. Now 33. How does artificial selection differ from artificial selection? Well, artificial selection does not involve competition for resources compared to natural selection, which involve competition for resources. As an example, if two giraffes, now one with a long neck and one with a short neck, and that one long neck is having an access to a tall tree which have leaves, but that short giraffe does not have an access to that tall tree. So basically the long tree survive, and the longer giraffe will survive, but the shorter giraffe will basically die, okay? So now artificial selection changes characteristics. No, that is incorrect. It's based on genetic variation. Of course no, it's sexual reproduction. Artificial selection over many generations. No, over many generations is natural selection, and I told in the previous exam I saw for variant 1 that natural selection occurred over many generations, and artificial selection is a faster way of having your variation, okay? Not variation, like in a different way. Now, a xerophytes lesson, basically a xerophyte concept. Which diagram of a xerophyte is labeled correctly? You have A, you have B, you have C, you have D. Let us read each one on one. Waxy layer to stop water evaporation. Of course, this is a check. Waxy layer to increase water evaporation. Of course, this is wrong. Waxy layer to increase water evaporation. No, you don't want water to be even lost from the plant. Okay, so this matches with what? With A. So both will have a check. Now, it's saying here extensive root system to maximize root water uptake, or extensive root system to minimize water uptake. So this will be also incorrect, because basically we want to absorb more water and at the same time reduces the water lost, and the same time reducing the water lost. So 34, it will be A. 35. Which row describes the energy flow into and through a food chain? That starts with a plant. That starts with what? With a plant. So energy entering a food chain, it will be light energy, of course. Energy transferred between organisms, it will be chemical energy. Because you will tell me why it's not heat. Because basically heat energy, it is the energy that is released. Remember that only 10% of the energy is being transferred and 90% is lost as what? 90% is lost as heat. I really want you to memorize this concept because it came in the June 2025 paper 4 variant 1 first page, like exactly this concept came, so I just want you to like keep aware of it. Now, so I have option B and option D incorrect. Now option A, energy entering a food chain chemical, of course no, because a plant does not get chemical energy. No, a plant gain light to carry out photosynthesis. Now it's in 36, it's telling you in a food chain, zebras are large mammals that eat grass. Zebras have many insects living on them, which suck their blood. Birds eat the insects. Pyramids of energy. So, which row identify type of pyramid for this food chain? Well, pyramids of energy is 3. You will tell me how. Basically, because I have bugs or I have these like insects, for example. So they will get this position. So they will get what? They will get the first position of what? Of the characteristics. Okay. And pyramid of numbers, it will be 1. Why pyramid of numbers will be 1? Because basically I have more insects, I have little zebras, I have more birds, and I have what? And I have, of course, little grass. Like, no, I have first in here, in 1, this part, I have more grass, I have less zebras, I have more insects, and I have a fewer number of birds. So grass and the plants should be like the most larger quantity in everything. It is larger at always and at all times. Okay, now moving to the next question. 37. Diagram shows a part of the nitrogen cycle. What is the processes listed X in the diagram? Labeled X in the diagram. So ammonium ions, nitrate ions, of course it is nitrification by what? By your nitrification by your nitrifying bacteria. And that idea also was repeated in May-June 2025 QB21 variant 1. Okay, nitrifying what? Nitrifying bacteria. Moving on. 38. It's telling you in here, the graph shows the number of water fleas in a newly created pond. What event could be responsible for the shape of the graph at Y? It's telling you addition of predators which feed on water flies, of course, because you are making a water fly habitat and you increase the predators, so of course the number of water fleas will decrease, basically because you have predation, you have a form of being them eaten and invaded by these predators, so of course the water fleas number will decrease. Now addition of extra oxygenating plants to the pond will increase the number of water fleas and is not representable to shape Y. And increase in birth rate, of course no. Increase in birth rate is this part, so this part I can say it is B. And increase in food supply for the water fleas, also this B and C. So it's not the correct part the graph is referring to. Now when managing fish stock as a sustainable resource, what is the reason for harvesting only the larger fish of a particular species? Smaller fishes are too young to breed, larger fishes are easier to harvest. And what is the answer? The answer here is D. Why? Let us analyze. He's saying here that he is only harvesting larger fish. Why larger fish? Larger fish are easier to harvest? Of course no. Larger fish need more space, need more nutrients. Larger fish are sold at a higher price. It is not the main cause of that question. It's not even related to the question, so you're gonna discard it out immediately. Okay. And letter C, smaller fish are eaten by predators. Also, this is not a sustainable resource answer, so of course you're gonna cancel and discard letter C, of course, immediately. So you're only left with letter D, and explaining letter D to you is very simple because, like, basically saying you smaller fishes are too young to breed. They need to get older for them to breed and to increase in number, and you know that process of what? Of replication and duplication, okay? Now, moving on to the last question. Which features make bacteria useful in biotechnology? 3 and 4. Let us read 3 and 4. 4, they reproduce rapidly. Of course, they reproduce rapidly. And 3, they make complex molecules. Well, in that here, they do not contain plasmids. Well, this is a very wrong, because in one of the characteristics of bacteria, that the bacteria is a prokaryote, and that prokaryote contain plasmids. So number 2 is basically, of course, wrong. Number 1, they are unaffected by antibiotics. Well, antibiotics kill bacteria and vaccination kill viruses. Be clear with this concept. It has been repeated in your variant 1 exam, paper 2. So you need to ensure that the bacteria are killed by antibiotics and the viruses are removed and vanished by vaccination programs. And well, that was all for the May-June 2025 examination paper, variant 2. I hope you had enjoyed my explanation, and if you have any comments or any question, just leave your questions in the comment section, and I will answer you immediately, and hope for you a happy and a lovely day, and thank you for your time.